Welcome back. You're watching India's Trade Playbook. This is a special year-end show where we turn the clock back on some of the biggest happenings in geoeconomics and make sense of the kind of deals that India is currently negotiating. So let's put the spotlight on the EU-India FTA. There's plenty of intent from the side of the European Union to sign the deal since the beginning of this year. But will it be the next deal that India signs? Well, let's bring on board India's former ambassador to the EU, Ambassador Manjeev Singh Puri, to discuss that and more. Thank you very much, Ambassador Puri, for taking the time out and speaking to us here on ET Now. We've just signed a deal with a Five Eyes partner, the New Zealand, after the United Kingdom and Oman this year. We'll talk about the EU deal as well. So plenty of negotiations that India is currently undertaking. But let's first focus on the New Zealand-India deal. How does the New Zealand-India deal fit into India's larger trade strategy?
Sumita, thank you. And thank you for inviting me to your program. Look, the way I look at it is New Zealand is not a very big player. It's an important country. It's a rich, developed country. And, building relations with everyone is important. I look at all of these trade things from a very simple lens. Trade and flag are two sides of the same coin. Let's understand that. And if any of us didn't understand this in the past, Mr. Donald Trump had brought this home to us crystal clear. So just as we are looking at multi-alignment now also in terms of what we do in terms of business, other countries are also looking at other things. And India being where we are today, the fifth largest economy, becoming the fourth largest economy, we are a country of interest to others. But let's also remember, while we are a country of interest to others, we should also look at other countries of being interest to us because, diversifying your portfolios is important. So it's not that the sum total of Indo-New Zealand deal will, what should I say, hugely boost either of the economies, no. But from India's perspective, it signals things. The New Zealanders get a good signal. They look to India in various ways, their dairy products, which are difficult for us to accept. But there are technological developments which are taking place in this kind of a developed country. And we from India look at New Zealand as yet another market for so many of our products. Let's also not forget the fairly interesting Indian diaspora in New Zealand. It also helps build on your Australian deal and what we are looking at in terms of our Look East policy, our actions in the Indo-Pacific. Very important. And so therefore, I welcome.
Right, so let's talk about what you just spoke about, which is about CBAM. There are concerns on matters related to CBAM, steel and autos, but CBAM to be more specific. How do you think that could be worked out? Will EU budge on its stance related to this policy?
So, Sumita, let's be clear, unlikely on the word budging. They didn't budge even with the United States. All that was included was some line saying they will show flexibilities. Look, trade is a power game. But we also need to recognize that they have passed a legislation on CBAM, and they believe that it is WTO compliant. Now, what most people in India say is that the larger companies, including in the steel sector, etc., they are anyway going to gear up to European standards. I can tell you from the time when I was ambassador there years back, the largest Indian players, whether it was in pharmaceuticals or it was in automobile components, they quietly adjusted themselves to those standards because those are global standards. But there are critical problems with the MSMEs, etc., and we understand. We need to negotiate this with the Europeans. Can we do something like, I'll just float an idea across. We do something like, look, the requirements for equivalence, we levy that kind of, whatever you may call it, a carbon equalization duty. We do it, we collect it here. Will they give us a window to do that? These are critical areas for discussion, important, but I really hope and believe that despite this seeming like an intractable situation, this issue of CBAM, we will not let it come in the way. We'll try to find some way around it, skirt it in some ways, and in any case, prepare our companies because, look, let's also understand that sustainability is not something that anybody can be running away from. The Europeans certainly are using trade to overcome the United Nations Framework Convention of Climate Change and its principles. We all know it. But the reality is that trade brings direct money. There are goods and services which get impacted. And at the end of the day, as I mentioned to you, the flag and trade are two sides of the coin. And you are, and you have to play this power game.
In fact, as you talk about that, earlier this year, there was an understanding that perhaps CBAM will be kept out and it will not be part of this particular FTA, but it could be looked at as part of, a different conversation. Do you see that happening? And is there any room for flexibility on the part of EU?
Look, my understanding is flexibility. Certainly, after that, they showed it to the United States. Is it dead and gone as far as we are concerned? I don't think so. If it doesn't get covered in our trade agreement, remember, EU's legislation is primary and is paramount, and it continues to be there. So, in some senses, in my opinion, there should be in the FTA agreement itself some kind of a way forward on this. Because it should be that for areas covered in the FTA, you get a go by. And otherwise, they say, look, our domestic laws in any case apply. So, in my understanding, this is a matter of importance. It's a matter of negotiation. But I really do believe that with a degree of sophistication and an understanding also from the European side, that look, if your interests are in carbon neutralization, if India finds some way of doing that, then you should be supportive and facilitative of that. So it would need a degree of doing this particularly well. Important to do so, especially as you mentioned, the MSME sector. The large players will take care of themselves. But we need to be cognizant of the fact that this is an issue, and this is an issue that we need to work in a sophisticated manner to try and find ways out. It's very easy to say, oh, the Americans didn't do it, it won't happen. If that happens, well and good, but it's unlikely that that will happen.
Absolutely, Ambassador. We'll have to see how that gets worked out by both the sides. But we also have to talk about the other very crucial deal, the US-India bilateral trade agreement. Both sides are looking at concluding the package deal first. And while that is happening, the world is also watching the Supreme Court's overturn of some of the tariffs which have been enacted by the Trump administration. So does the Trump administration have other measures?
So, in the United States, there are legal things and there are different ways and means to be able to levy tariffs. Now, Mr. Trump used a sort of an omnibus clause, a kind of national security clause. That has been challenged and it's looking very problematic for them. But the executive powers in these things are very vast. If this particular route has been blocked, they'll use another route to do it. There is a kind of feeling there that, we want to do it. And there is a sentiment in certain parts of the US public, which accounts for a certain amount of political heft there, that they will do it, they'll find ways and means to do it. Now, what I see interesting is that if we can somehow get over that 25% penalty, which has been levied on account of our having purchased oil from Russia, which we are cutting down for a variety of reasons. Our own companies are cutting down. And we come down to 25%. Remember, with a general base tariff of 19%, I think our companies are not badly positioned to be able to deal with the matters. In fact, isn't it true that during the month of November, we had increase in our exports to the United States? Having said all this, these are all matters that need to be discussed. They need to be, because let's remember, in a very important sense of the term, the United States is the largest economy. For us, it's important. We're looking at various ways of leveraging our relationship with that economy to take our own selves forward. And so, therefore, these are important elements, and they are important elements where, certain amounts of gives have to happen. On their side, what you are generally seeing is a degree of inflexibility. That's the nature of that politics at the moment. But can we harness it such that that inflexibility is minimized? I think we are working towards that.
You mentioned that it's important for us, but how important is it for the United States to finalize this trade deal and get it going?
Look, we are not that large trading partners of anybody in the world in general. So let's understand that. In terms of Mr. Trump and his politics, he has repeatedly said good words about the Honorable Prime Minister. He said India is an important country. Some people are talking about some kind of a nexus of 5 countries where we would be included. Of course, we were not included in countries dealing with rare earths. But, India is an important country as far as the United States is concerned. But if I should say that, it's a make or break from that side, no, I don't think that would be the case. From our perspective, much more of greater interest. The other side, On the European side, I think they should have much greater interest than, if this relative clause is going on between US India versus EU India. On their side, there should be much greater interest because of the nature of the fact that they also need to try and diversify their markets and what they do, not just that great dependency across the Atlantic, because politics being what they are, and the fallouts tend to be immediate. That's the nature of it. So we need to be, let me say, on the United States case, and I think we are. We are showing them interest. On their part also, certain areas in the United States, certain companies, certain kinds of businesses see tremendous potential in India. After all, it isn't for nothing that Google, Amazon, Microsoft, etc. are making huge investment. So there are these kind of countervailing pressures, but in terms of the overall politics of things, there is a certain kind of inflexibility being shown at that end, and we need to try and minimize that through shrewd and good negotiations. And I have no doubt that that's exactly what is being pursued.
Indeed, lots of very interesting developments. 2026, at least the first quarter of 2026 from Jan to March is going to be packed, given the fact that many of these deals, some of which will get finalized, the other will start moving, especially when it comes to Canada and Israel. We've signed the TOR with Israel, but how much of a movement is there going to be with respect to some of these deals? That remains to be seen. But thank you very much, Ambassador Puri, for taking the time out and speaking to us here on ET Now and sharing your thoughts and perspectives. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in to a special show, India's Trade Playbook. Hope you liked the show as much as we did putting it together for you.